valley far below. On the mountain was a treasure, hidden deep beneath the stone, and the valley people swore they'd have it for their very own. One Tin Soldier was written by Dennis Lambert and Brian Potter and was originally recorded by a group called the Original Cast in 1969. People have loved stories for a long time. As far back as archaeologists and scientists have found people, they have found stories, or at least the essence of story. Tonight, as we celebrate Canada, 150 years of Canada, we are going to look at the past, and we are going to look at the future. So please sit back and enjoy a night of poetry and story as we celebrate Studio 9's 5th annual Free the Word Author and Poetry Night. The stories you're going to hear tonight are historical fictions. The grade 7 and 8 creative writing class went down to the museum. They researched people who were important in Kelowna's past. They picked out 3 facts about those people and have recreated a story around that person. So your job as the audience members tonight is to listen to the stories and see if you can separate fact from fiction. we're going to open up tonight with Rio Justice and her story on Caroline Casorso.
Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Rio Justice. I'm in grade 8 and I go to Studio 9. My story is about Caroline Casorso, Rosa Casorso's daughter, who's one of Kelowna's historical figures. The title of my story is called The Longest Journey of My Life. Chapter 1, The Arrival. Finally, to walk on solid ground again was a relief, but my journey was far from over. I left my home, Genoa, Italy, about a month ago to land here in San Francisco. It's big and it always smells like fish. I don't know what anyone's saying. All I do is keep my head down and follow my mother, Rosa Casorso. She stands out from the crowd of bustling people. Her dress is purple with a straw hat. In one hand is my little baby brother, Charles, but don't call him little, he doesn't like that. And in the other is our luggage. But clenched in her fist is a piece of paper. I can't read it, but Ma told me that it said, Father Pandozzi, Okanagan Mission. I want to know who Father Pandozzi is, why he's called Father. Also, where's Okanagan Mission? I hope it's close. I'm tired and hungry. I have to look after my other brother, Anthony. He's 4, Charles is 3, and I'm 5, but I'll be 6 next week. Caroline, hurry up, calls Mom. I say nothing and walk faster. I know better than to contradict her. She's walking around, waving the piece of paper in people's faces, hoping for someone to tell us where to go. After what seems like hours, we meet a strange man. Yes, someone who can speak Italian. He tells us his name is Giovanni Ravillo. He has the same first name as my father. I miss him so much. And even if I only have a few memories of him, that's okay, because Mother talks about him all the time. I was 3 when he left to go to Okanagan. Charles wasn't even born yet. The man said, follow the bell over there, and it will take you to where you want to go. From then on, my mother never took her eyes off that bell, except for a couple times, and that brings me to the first time she ever took her attention away from that guide. Chapter 2, the first incident. We had found a wagon pulled by 2 horses. I'm very convinced it was a miracle. They were heading in the same direction as the bell, but Ma wasn't sure how long it'd take to get to our final destination. All she knew was that they would give us a ride, which was good enough for us. I went to sleep that night, hungry, for the last meal I had was on the boat that morning. The next day, I woke up and wolfed down stale bread and split the cheese between the 4 of us. In the wagon, there was only us, plus the chauffeur. He was an older man with gray hair and overalls. The only way that we could communicate with him was through rudimentary hand gestures. As night after night passed and the days became shorter and shorter, I became so bored until one day when the sky decided to bring rain, taking thunder and lightning. Deep in the night, the wagon came to a halt. The wheel was stuck in mud, and we were far from civilization. The gray-haired man got out of the front seat and tried with all his might to push the wagon out of the sludge. The bell that was being pulled on the wagon ahead of us steadily grew out of sight. Soon my mom stood up, hitched up her skirts, and got out of the wagon, ready to help, desperate to get back on the road so as not to lose her guide. I comforted my two brothers, who were crying, but their sobbing was lost in the wind. Hours went by, but they just kept trying. Then, with one final push, the horses pulled the wagon out of the mud, and my mother clambered into the wagon, covered with dirt, tired but relieved. Chapter 3, The Meeting. Apparently, we had arrived in a place called New Westminster. The wagon man said that he could take us no further. So we got out of the wagon, not knowing where to go or what to do, because we hadn't seen the bell since we'd entered the town. I waved goodbye to the man as we stood on the platform outside of a hotel. We went into the hotel, up the stairs to the bar, where we hoped to get some decent food. A man came towards us. He said his name was Joe Greaves, and that father had sent him to escort us to our destination. But Mother wouldn't let him, so he offered to set us up at his place by a river. So she took him up on that offer. For 2 days, I helped Ma wash, try to fish, and keep Anthony and Charles in line. It felt amazing to go to sleep with a full belly. I was content, but Ma seemed worried. She was constantly staring at the road that passed by the water's edge, hoping for the bell to appear. And one day, her prayer was finally answered. The wagon containing the bell came trundling along to her relief. So, Mr. Greaves found us a ride with another man heading to a place called Camden's. Chapter 4, The Birthday. Today is my birthday, and I couldn't be happier to be 6. Since we're on the road, I didn't expect much, but Ma, Charles, and Anthony surprised me with a brand new doll, and I'm pretty sure Charles picked it up. She has brown hair, brown eyes, just like me. I already found a name for her. It's Isabella, but I'll call her Izzy for short. We stopped in a small town to get some more food for the trip. And Mother said that when you're older, you get more responsibilities. So she left me in charge of the boys while she and the man pulling the wagon went into the town. I looked around my surroundings. Over there, a willow tree hanging over a river, the trunk almost parallel to the ground. Not thinking, I ran to the tree, jumped onto the trunk, and walked out as far as I could, with my brothers falling in my shadow. My hand clenched around my doll as I walked onto the thickest branch. As it swayed in the wind, I fell forward, losing my balance, and the doll went toppling down to the brown water below. But a new splash caught my ear, and as I looked down, I saw Charles struggling in the water below. I screamed for help, as loud as I could. I saw my mother and the wagon man come running. The man jumped into the water just as Charles' head went under. He grabbed him and pulled him out. Panting and dripping with water, everyone was fine. For now. Chapter 5, The Sorrow. Mother wrapped Charles in a blanket and placed him at the front of the wagon, in the warmest spot. The silence was unbearable. Silent tears poured down my face as I clutched at my wet doll that Charles had so valiantly retrieved. When I woke up, my worst fear had been realized. The little figure of my favorite mother was nowhere to be seen, nor was Ma's. I stumbled out of the wagon in grief. My brother was dead, and it was my fault. My fault for going onto the trunk. My fault for slipping and dropping the doll. And my fault for not jumping in after him to save him. He was so brave for trying to save merely a piece of cloth, not even caring that he could not swim, and all I could do was cry, just like a baby. I was stumbling around with my eyes closed, wishing for just one last moment to say goodbye, when I ran into something, a figure. I opened my eyes, and to my relief, there was Charles. I ran to him, not caring about Mother's disapproving looks in the background that read, "Girls don't run, they walk, ladylike." But I didn't care. He was my brother, and I loved him. Chapter 6, The Ending. Forgive and forget, that's the saying, right? Well, that didn't happen. Ma never trusted me with the boys until I was much older. I was grounded, and on top of that, I had to give my doll to Charles. But I didn't really care. Well, maybe a bit. But we finally landed in Okanagan Mission. You should have seen Father's face when he saw us. He was so happy. And now we can at last put the longest journey of our life behind us. My name is Rio Justice, and that was my story about Caroline Casorso.
Rio. Next up, we have a poem from Ava Mickelson and Nadia Himmelstein.
Where's my tattoo?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
My name is Nadia Himmelstein.
And my name is Ava Mickelson. Both are in grade 6 and go to Studio 9. This evening we will be sharing a poem we worked on, Animals and the Living.
The animals are going extinct, and we need to put our heads together and think.
The world is dying and relying on us, and we know we don't want to turn into dust.
We used to have the best time of our lives, but now you're going to kill all the beehives.
We need to stop polluting the air, because if we don't, everything will be unfair.
I don't want Mother Earth to die because of us. We need to save all the animals we must.
I feel like our planets are at war. I was wondering if we can go back to before.
Once again, my name is Nadia Himmelstein.
And my name is Ava Mickelson. We both are students in grade 6 and we go to Studio 9. Thank you for listening to our poem.
I like having a tech guy, usually it's me doing that. Next up, we have Caden Kowalski. He's going to be sharing a story about George Hudson, Kelowna's first photographer.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Caden. I'm in grade 8 and a student at Studio 9. And I'm going to introduce you to the life and story of George Harold Edward Hudson. George Harold Edward Hudson came to Kelowna in 1906, along with his sister from Scarborough, England. They came to Canada to pick up his sister's fiancé. And en route to Kelowna, George began to take photos of the scenery. It was much different from the scenery from his hometown. He enjoyed it. But the journey was a challenging one. For one, George rode in coach. He considered himself a first-class man. He was also accompanied by the two lovebirds, his sister and her fiancé. When they arrived in Okanagan, but first he decided to part ways with his sister and her fiancé. George now had no job, so his first adventure was to find a job. So off to Kelowna he went. Upon arriving in Kelowna to look for a job, he first needed to get his camera slides produced. And by luck he stumbled to Alex Morgan, a fellow photographer at the time. They both got to talking and a friendship was born. Even though George and Alex were good friends, George felt a little overwhelmed. And since there was a new competitor. But George always liked the competition. So George Harold Edward Hudson grabbed his camera and set off on his journey, looking for as many adventures as he could endure, take as many different photos as he could. George mostly took photos of his surroundings, but he got many wonderful photos of animals, such as the baby black bear. With the little money he had, room and board was always a challenge. Not one day. He met a little old woman named Gladys. Gladys ran one of the cheapest room and boards out there. And finally, George had a place he could call home and could focus on his photography. Times were changing, and from the first time he arrived in 1906 to almost 5 months later, Kelowna was booming. George Harold Edward Hudson's career was finally taking off, and he was beginning to take wedding photos. By 1908, George Harold Edward Hudson was in talks with a man about buying a studio, for he finally saved up enough money to open his own studio. Now with his own studio, he began to take even more photos of different events and things. With the town growing so fast that was never a problem, George began to take photos of the new growing cattle ranches and wheat farms. Now George Edward Hudson had bought a studio and could no longer afford to stay in room and board. So he lived in his studio. George Hudson's business partner noticed and decided to give him a little bit more money and support. Arden studio to Hudson Sandwich Studio. Then he was coming close to the First World War, and Hudson got worried about his family back home in Britain. So he went back home. But to capture the last moment in Canada, George took one last photo of everyone he knew in front of his studio, which he brought for him for good luck. My name is Kane Quality, and that was my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaden. I'm now going to ask Dacian Janvier to come up and share his poem, World Health Congress.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today my name is Dacian Janvier, and I am in grade 7 at Studio 9. Today I will be reading my poem called World Health Comics. The world is like a damsel in distress. World superheroes are depressed. And it's up to us to finish the rest. Pollution is a pest. If we help, we will truly be the best. If we succeed, we will be blessed. What will it take to process that our wrongdoing is bad? We need something to suppress. It's a work in progress that some of us are too careless. We are the Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and the world is like our Scooby snacks. We will do anything for the world, and the world will do anything for us.
Thank you, Dacian. Next, I would like to call up Andrew LeClaire, and he's going to be sharing a story about the SS Aberdeen.
Testing. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew LeClaire. I'm in grade 8 at Studio 9. Today I'll be reading my story about the SS Aberdeen. Hello, I'm Frank Dodson, and I'm going to tell you about the many times I went on the SS Aberdeen. Before anything, I should probably tell you about the SS Aberdeen. The SS Aberdeen was a steamship that was commissioned by Canadian Pacific Railways in the year 1893. It was named after the Earl of Aberdeen. Now I've told you about the SS Aberdeen, I'm going to tell you about the first time I boarded the ship back in 1899. When I walked onto the ship, it looked like it was just built. Although being in service for 6 years, I couldn't find any peeling paint or squeaky bits of wood. The crew was amazing, so was the view of the lake from the ship. Since I just moved to the Okanagan, this was the first time I crossed the lake. Even today, I can still remember when I was 11 exploring this wonderful ship. A few years later, back in 1907, when I was working on the Aberdeen, I met Captain J. Foster. The captain commanded the ship with a skill I could only describe as graceful. Going back in time when I first went on the ship, to me the ship was as big as a city, with corners and hallways always leading me to somewhere new. The ship to me always seemed like it was getting bigger. At every chance I had to explore, I explored. The ship had to be my favorite place I'd been at so far at the time. When I had the urge to explore the ship, I would run away from my parents, with them chasing me wherever I went. It took me until when I ended up working on the ship to explore every inch of it. Needless to say, I was still impressed by it. Although the ship grew smaller as I grew bigger, whenever I went on the ship, I was always reminded of the time when I nearly lost my parents. It started when I ran away from my parents in an attempt to explore the ship. I accidentally got to the other side of the ship while on the opposite side of the ship from my parents. I managed to get back to the other side of the ship when my parents weren't there. It wasn't until afterwards I realized we were basically playing a game of cat and mouse with them. But it's pretty hard to do since the ship was crammed with people. I was retracing my steps when I was grabbed by someone suddenly. I said, "Let me go," only to open my eyes and realize it was my father. At first I thought my father would be mad at me, but honestly he was just happy to see me. My parents were mad at me a bit for running off, but not as much as I expected. They told me, however, that the next time I went on the SS Aberdeen, not to run off or they wouldn't feed me dinner. The next time I went on the SS Aberdeen, I did exactly what they told me to. Even thinking back to this today honestly scares me. It was a feeling of never seeing the ones I love again, which is what keeping me from running off again. until I started working on the Aberdeen, but I got to go on the ship again. And when I entered the ship as a worker instead of a passenger, I was still impressed by the old ship that I had grown to know and love. Everything about the Aberdeen, such as the trip to communities alongside Okanagan Lake, and the strangely familiar smell of coal coming from the coal burner. I worked on the Aberdeen until I was 21. Then I got a job that would help sustain my family better. When I look back on the first and last time I went on the Aberdeen, I noticed that the floor and walls looked different, and the smell of burning wood was replaced with the smell of burning coal. Now it's a steamship, but as of now, the steamship that I loved was, to my dismay, decommissioned and all sold. Although the ship is gone, it still sails on my memories. The end. I'll demo with Claire, and that was my historical fiction project.
Thank you, Andrew. I would like to now call up Georgia Bird and Sarah Olson for their poem titled, What Can We Do?
Okay? Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Olson. And I'm Georgia Byrne. We are in grade 6 at Studio 9. We will be sharing our poem called What Can We Do Today? The animals are dying, the world is crying. We are trying, but there is no trying.
The wolves were howling, but not anymore. We can bring it back if we try a little more.
The forests are burning.
We are turning the world upside down.
You say you'll stop pollution, but that's one big lie.
We can't save the earth unless we all try.
We hope after this there'll be more eagles soaring. We hope your love is pouring.
If we start today, we can finally save her.
If we start in Kelowna and grow all up, there will be no doubt.
There's lots of garbage in our streets, in our lives, and in our creeks.
In Kelowna we can change. We hope to spread across a large range.
If we start small, the trees will grow tall, and the world will be a better place.
But we're getting closer to our goal. But if we don't try, there will be no goal.
Let's start right here, right now, today.
Everything will be better if we can finally say hooray.
Once again, I'm Georgia Byrne.
And I'm Sarah Olson.
We are grade 6 students at Studio 9.
Thank you for listening to our poem.
Thank you, girls. I'm going to bring up another duo of Isaiah and Eli. They have a poem called Our Future.
Is it like this? Yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Isaiah.
And my name is Eli.
I'm grade 7.
And I'm grade 6.
We go to school at Studio 9. This evening we will be sharing our poem. It is entitled.
To change what has been done, we have to come together all as one to save our world. We are truly consumed. If someone cuts down a tree, plant a new one in its place. Our past does not control our future. We need to change.
Our past is full of anger, hate, and war. Our future is full of joy, happiness, and safety. Only if we stand together as one, we can't save our past, but we can save our future. To start making a change, we have to come together all as one and do some easy work. We can start by riding and then walking our bikes to school. Tons of old equipment and rubbish litter Mount Everest. It is sometimes described as the highest garbage dump. A huge cleanup is taking place on the mountain, but please don't let it happen again. Once again, my name is Isaiah.
And my name is Eli.
I'm grade 7
And I'm grade 6.
at Studio 9. Thank you for listening to our poem.
Thank you, boys. Next, I'm going to ask Greta to come up. Now, as Greta comes up and a few other performers come up, you're going to see they have some similar characters in mind. So this is where you guys as the audience need to start picking out facts, because Rosa also has a story about, Greta has a story about Rosa Consortium.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Greta Horvath. I'm in grade 7 at Studio 9. Today I'll be sharing facts about the Casorso family. The Casorso family. The first tree the Casorso family grew was clingstone, a very small peach, which was excellent in quality and only variety of peaches planted in that time. In 1932, Mr. Casorso passed away at the age of 84. In that time, that was pretty old. Mr. Casorso was born in 1848 and his death was 169 years ago. The 66-year-old woman surprised her Christmas tree up with her finest jewelry. Her home was the third dwelling of the Rosa and Guelph Casorso, what have lived in since in the early 1880s. The home was built in 1907, featuring over 3,000 square feet, surrounded by verandas with brown columns and curving porch eaves, reminiscent of an Italian and Mediterranean influence. The first Casorso house was very small. The home features 9-foot ceiling and has an indent. Old wood flooring, strong oak firewood doors, wooden windows, reddish-brown walnut colored. A hipped roof highlighted the dormers, protected bay windows, and central brick fireplace, and a room enough for a large family. The Casorso house was a 1.5-story residence, built in stages about 1886 and 1891. The pioneer Veracruz Manor. And it was located at 3,877 Casorso Road in Canada's southeast sector. The Casorso family was very nice and very loyal to the people in the neighborhood. They lived there for 84 years until Mr. Casorso died. On New Year's Eve of 1908, the family and friends took the day off to move furniture in the new home and forced the resident couple into their new home by christening. It is the start of the new year of 105 years ago. They are really rich. That's why they can afford 3 houses, so don't judge them. Only a few changes have been made to the heritage home. Modern baths were installed, updated in the 1970s according to tile and hardware colors. The second-story open patio became Morel's, the oldest son, kitchen upstairs when he arrived in Canada. Louis, she was the wife, died in 1969, and August and Morel along with their children. A family of 7, 5 girls and 2 boys, inherited home and moved to the first floor of the expensive home. They lived on the second floor for 24 years of their marriage. Like all families, the Casorso were and are human. 2 of the brothers didn't speak to one another for 20 years. That was Louis and Peter. Upon Brother Joe's passing in 1960, the pair made amends of sorts. Even though they lived across from the street from one another, you can see the course records and voter lists to see where families with the Casorso surname lived over the years. While questions and concerns recorded vary from place to place and year to year, you can generally find information like the household members, ages, birthplaces, and residences. My name was Greta, and this was facts about the Casorso family.
Thank you, Greta. I'd now like to call up Liam Boyle. He is going to share a poem called Farewells.
Hello, my name is Liam Doyle, and I am in grade 9, go to Studio 9, and this is my poem called Farewells. Waiting, tapping your nails against the table you work on. Waiting, your breath rate increases with every passing minute, distracting yourself from the horrific, self-destructive, fearful thoughts of your own mind's creation. Waiting for an answer of what you've become. You say everything is fine with you, a perfectly normal human being, mentally stable. But over time, others start to see an exploitable vulnerability that's been hiding so deeply within you so you aren't branded by society as a freak. But the few that have noticed tear you apart by hideous hooks of hatred and disdain so gruesomely an empty, broken shell, and the truth it contained are the remnants of this torture. Run. The only thing that comes to mind when your room that you're in has crumbling walls that are collapsing as fast as your mental state is decaying into a hellish state where there's no difference between love and hate because they both hurt too much to tell the difference. The difference being one is constructive, the other deconstructive, but you are so past damage that any care leaves burns and you take pleasure in pain. Up is behind you as you twist onwards into a desolate plain where all light transforms into an infernal night where nothing is right and everything seems to become one evil thing. The reason you are writing your final farewells. Thank you.
Thank you again. Wow. Next, I'm going to ask Avital Shapiro to come up to share her poem titled Society.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Avital Shapiro. I'm in grade 7 and I go to Studio 9. Today I will be sharing with you my poem called Society. Society. Sitting in a room, alone. Watching everyone sitting there and laughing in a room amongst each other. But I'm just sitting in the corner watching everyone laugh and have fun. I think of how I used to be one of those kids who would always have fun. I still remember how I tried to include a girl into my friend group, but then those kids made fun of me. Depression, anxiety. I wonder why I am so imperfect. Why does society form us like this? Why? Why do girls have to wear skinny jeans or black leggings that have to make your butt look good or else you're one of those girls? A whore, slut, ugly fat girl when all you eat today was a granola bar. What you see on social media is a picture-perfect girl with a picture-perfect life. But what you don't see is that she's starving herself. Misery, suspense, lonely. All you have left is your plain old granola bar. You cut, bleed, and scar. What has society done to us? Once again, my name is Avital Shapiro, and that was my poem called Society.
Thank you, Avital. I'm going to whisk us back into history again with River Taylor and her story about Lady Aberdeen.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Oh, it's low. Awesome. Good evening, everyone. My name is River Taylor. I'm in grade 8 and I go to Studio 9. Today I'm going to be telling you the story of Lady Aberdeen and when she first came to Kelowna. The name Aberdeen may sound familiar if you live in the Okanagan, but do you really know the story behind it? I'm going to tell you the story of Lady Aberdeen and when she first came to Kelowna and how she fell in love with it. This story is written as a diary and I have used some quotes from her actual journal. September 17th, 1890. Dear Diary, it has been 2 weeks since I have left Scotland, and to say the least, I miss it, and everything about it. But by no means do I need to complain. The boat we took to America was gorgeous, and the train from America to Canada is exceptionally spacious and classy. There's nothing wrong with the food or the staff, but still something feels missing, for I am terribly homesick. Lord Aberdeen and I were supposed to arrive in Canada 7 days ago, but the train has been much slower than we predicted. The day we were set to arrive in Canada seems to be getting farther and farther away, so lately everyone has been particularly irritable. But one spacious train was shrinking, and it's as if we can't get away from each other. I was antsy to get to Canada as we were visiting my brother John in Kelowna, and he wrote me many letters about how beautiful it was, but lately doubt has been clouding my mind. September 18, 1890. Dear Diary, this morning I woke to truly the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Overnight we arrived in Canada, and I honestly did not expect it to be so breathtaking. It was as if the mountains scraped the sky, evergreen valleys and forests more vibrant than I could ever imagine that stretched for miles, and rich sapphire lakes around every turn. I had thought that Scotland was by far the most beautiful place on earth, but now I wasn't so sure. I spent the entire day gazing out the window, admiring the beauty, and I almost didn't feel homesick anymore. Later in the day, the conductor said we were in the Rocky Mountains and had to continue on to Kelowna to visit my brother. I couldn't help but think the Rocky Mountains was such a boring name for such a beautiful place. September 20th,
1890. Dear Diary, today we passed through Saskatchewan, which was the opposite from the Rocky Mountains, which I'd later learn to pass through Alberta, one of Canada's many provinces, which I thought was a strange way of dividing land since we have councils in Scotland. Anyway, Saskatchewan was so flat you could see for miles. Buttery gold wheat fields stretched on endlessly and never seemed to end. The plains were dotted with ivory birch forests. Canada was beautiful, but also very strange. For example, in Scotland, everywhere has the same rolling green hills, but in Canada, each province is unique. September 25th, 1890. Dear Diary, today we made it to Kelowna, and by far it is my most favorite place in Canada. It is shaped like a bowl with an orchard-strewn valley in the middle and towering mountains surrounding it from every angle. When John met up with us at the train station, I was overjoyed to see him, and I was so happy to be off that awful train, as was Lord Aberdeen. It felt as if we'd been on it for years, but it was only 3 weeks. John then proceeded to surprise us with a carriage ride around Kelowna. Everything about it was amazing. The scenery, the people, even the air smelled better, like fresh apples and fallen rain. I couldn't imagine what it would be like to live here. John told us of the work he's been doing in Kelowna. He was running an orchard and shipping the produce out to America. But he said the city was still barely coming together, and the closest doctor was out in Vernon. I thought that was disgusting. It must be awful only having one doctor and the distance he must have traveled if there was an emergency. I've always wanted to be a doctor. Even in grade school, my teacher suggested I go to university. But Father was quite old-fashioned and stubborn, especially when it came to girls attending school. I was lucky to even go to grade school. Suddenly, I was flooded with ideas. Like I could do so much for Kelowna. That night, back at my brother's ranch, I proposed the idea of moving our family out to Kelowna to Lord Aberdeen, and I told him how many great ideas I had for it, but he just thought I was in over my head. I decided not to let his doubt drag me down, but instead give me drive to prove him wrong. September 26, 1890. I spent the whole day today looking at ranches for sale with Jane, John's wife. While Lord Aberdeen and John toured around Kelowna, I found many beautiful ranches that would be perfect for my family, and I just couldn't understand why Lord Aberdeen didn't see the beauty in Kelowna. Throughout the day, I also spoke to many of the commoner women and how they felt about Kelowna. It turns out most of the women spent their days slaving away in orchards and have no opportunities to express themselves creatively or even look for other jobs because most of them had no money left or were in debt and were trying to start over, and the only thing they had were orchards. After hearing the stories of so many women and how they had nothing, I decided to do whatever I could to make Kelowna the best place to live in me. Once again, I tried to persuade Lord Aberdeen into purchasing a ranch here. I even told him the story of all the poor farmers here and what we could do for them. Once again, he ignored me. I began to get very frustrated as we only had 2 days left in Kelowna. September 27, 1890. I can't believe I only have 1 day left in Kelowna. 1 day left to persuade Lord Aberdeen to purchase land in Kelowna. Lord Aberdeen and John had went out for lunch, so I used this opportunity to tell Jane I wanted to help this place and make it better. We both agreed that the lack of doctors and nurses was awful, so our main focus was to create some sort of organization where women could volunteer and learn how to be nurses and then care for the sick. We were so busy brainstorming, we didn't even notice when the men came home and suggested we go for an evening carriage ride. The carriage ride was beautiful. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange light over the valley. About 20 minutes in, we turned off the main road and began up a long dirt road through the middle of a cherry orchard. I looked over at Jane, and she looked equally confused. Finally, the road ended and pulled up to a gorgeous Victorian ranch house with a crescent lawn. It had gotten dark, and moonlight cast over the house. It was perfect. John and Lord Aberdeen shared a glance, and then Lord Aberdeen announced that this was our new part-time ranch. I was overjoyed. That's what they must have been doing all day. That night, back at my brother's ranch, I was so excited to tour the house in the morning. September 28, 1890. We decided to stay in Kelowna 2 more days to settle in the new ranch. It was gorgeous inside, with just enough room for our 4 children and 2 dogs. I was so excited for them to see how beautiful Kelowna is. I talked to Lord Aberdeen about my nurse's idea, and he actually said he would support and help me. We brainstormed all day and came to the conclusion that when we went back to Scotland, I would go to university and get my nurse's degree, which took 4 months. And then we'd come back to Kelowna with our family and get together a small group of women and train them to be in-care home nurses for the elderly. September 30th, 1890. This will be my final diary entry in Kelowna for the next 4 months. Tomorrow we are heading back to Scotland to tell our family the great news so I can get my nurse's degree. While we are away, my brother will look after our house and tend to the orchards. My sister-in-law and I decided to call our nurses project the Victorian Order of Nurses, or VAUGHN for short. And she and my brother agreed to help fund us and provide training for the nurses to be. All in all, this trip to Kelowna definitely changed my life in ways I did not think. And I'm so excited to change the lives of others when I return. Once again, my name is River Taylor, and that is my story about Lady Aberdeen.
Brooklyn Bonnet to come up and share her story of Rosa Casorso.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brooklyn Bonnet. I'm in grade 7 at Studio 9, and I'll be sharing my story about Rosa Casorso. It's called The Hardest Time of My Life. Rosa Casorso stepped off the boat with excitement. It was the start of her new life. Rosa, mother of 9 and wife to John Casorso, was traveling from Italy to San Francisco with 3 children, Caroline, Charles, and Anthony. The family was excited to start their journey, but little did they know what they would be getting into. Rosa had a piece of paper in her hand that read, Father Pandozzi, Okanagan Mission. Rosa had no idea how she would reach her home in the Okanagan, but she was determined to get there. Soon after, Rosa saw a bell that would be traveling from San Francisco all the way to the Okanagan Mission. That was the only way Rosa could think of. She took her children and they left. Rosa found that the route followed the Canadian port of New Westminster. They had a long journey ahead of them. It was 2 days later, still on the train, and Rosa still had her eyes on the bell. Back in the Okanagan, Rosa's husband, John, got a message. Rosa and the children were traveling on a train. John sent a man called Joe Grease to escort the family to their Okanagan home. When Joe finally found the family of 4, he told them he was sent by John. Later, he invited them to his small wagon, with 2 horses pulling them. Joe tried comforting the cold, hungry family. He gave them blankets and fishing lines to try to catch some food. For days, Rosa washed, fished, and tried to keep her family clean. Rosa, the children, and Joe were finally on the road again. From Yale, the bell was going to Kent. That was a 2-week trip, but it had to be done. Days were getting colder. They had been on that small gravelly road for about a week now, still following the bell and still struggling to stay safe. If their situation couldn't get any worse, one of the horses pulling the wagon got weaker. It was getting frostbite. Later, they had to put the horse down. Because of this problem happening, having one less horse made their trip slower and longer. The last horse was getting weak as well. On top of that, the family was running out of fish, and there was no close-by streams to catch any. The family was getting weaker and weaker day by day. Finally, the family reached Kamloops. The bell was placed on the train going to the Okanagan. Rosa used all the money she had in her pocket to get tickets for her family to go to their home. They said their goodbyes and thanked Joe for the kindness he showed to them. Their family was finally on their way home. The children were very excited to see their father. For Rosa, she was eager to see her husband again. Rosa and her children felt comfort. They had good food and Rosa could sleep peacefully. The wait was almost over. 2 more hours until the children could see their father again. John would be waiting at the train station to see his family tackling to their new home. John had almost forgotten what his children had looked like. It's been a couple months since he's seen them last. 1 more hour. Anthony was counting down the minutes until he could see his father again. Caroline and Charles, on the other hand, well, they were just stuffing their faces with all the delicious food. The hour had gone by. All the waiting was over. The train was making its way to the station. There was John standing there with excitement. About half an hour later, the entire family had made it back to their home. The kids were playing, singing in their rooms, and Rosa and John were happy to be reunited. Later that night, Rosa was telling John that on their long journey, she felt a pinch in her chest, but she didn't think anything of it. John told her it could be dangerous. She disagreed. She said it was probably just a bug bite. The children were in tears. John couldn't even think about the tragedy. Rosa passed away, only 2 weeks after they returned home. The doctors think it was because of the pinch she felt in her chest that passed mine. None of them even believed it was true. John felt like he could have done something to stop it, but it was too late. A week later, the funeral would be held. The family dressed in their fancy black clothing to attend the funeral. It was very painful seeing their mother and wife on the death table. It was something they didn't even see coming. Though it would be hard going on without Rosa, the family still had a huge life waiting to happen. So many more adventures and memories of this family would experience. Who knows what other stories they would have to tell. They will always live with the story of Rosa Casorso. My name is Brooke, and that was my story about Rosa Casorso.
Thank you, Brooklyn. I'm now going to ask Kira Kowalski to come up and share her story about Frederick Brent at Kelowna's first grist mill.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kira Kowalski. I'm a grade 8 student at Studio 9. Today I'll be sharing my story about Frederick Brent. Frederick Brent was born Frederick Wendt on December 1st, 1827, in Prussia, Germany. As a young man, he immigrated to the United States, where he changed his name to Brent by the custom of the official. In 1854, At Fort Maroon, he enlisted in the United States Army, and by the following year, he was living in the Washington Territory. In 1858, he traveled into the Okanagan Valley as an Army Scout for groups of miners who were heading to the goldfield in Merritt. He was discharged from the Army in 1859 and then married Mary, a daughter of Chief Neequa, the Grand Chief of the Okanagan people. After receiving his discharge from the Army, he and his wife farmed in the Coal Valley area for 3 years. And in 1863, Frederick and Mary Brent had their first son, Joseph, and decided to move to the Okanagan Valley. In 1865, Frederick had saved enough money to purchase the empty lot at the south end of Duck Lake from the Parson brothers for only $600. On the property there was a water wheel that was required to run the mill. One day, as he was fixing an issue with the water wheel, his wife, Marianne, offered to help him. But Frederick Brent refused, because he can do it by himself. The wheel fell to the ground with a big thump, which made Frederick jump. After that, he was more careful and listened to his wife a bit more. Then there were a few other minor accidents fixing the mill, but within 2 months, the mill was up and running. Frederick built his first flour mill, a small steel grinding mill that milled wheat into flour, which was then shifted through a fine sieve crafted by weaving horsehairs into a fabricated bottom of a wooden bowl. The bowl which was shaken separated the flour from the bran, which was put aside for later. He opened his first mill in spring of 1866, and it took several months before the business took off. The British Columbia newspaper reported Wednesday, November 14th, 1866. It reported that the new mill at Okanagan makes very good flour, which is offered at $1,000 per pound. After only being open for 5 years, Frederick sold the mill at the Duck Lake property in 1870 to George Simpson. Simpson continued to operate the mill at the Duck Lake property for another 2 years before he moved the mill further along Pine Creek to a new property. In 1870, Frederick Brent purchased another piece of land on Pine Creek from August Hamels to build a 2-story log home for his grandson and a new grist mill. Brent's new flour mill was the first stone grinding flour mill to be operated in the Okanagan Valley. The mill operated from the middle of spring to late fall every year, for 20 years before he decided to sell it. In 1890, Frederick had over 2,000 acres of land for the mill, and by the following year, July 1891, he placed it up for sale in the for sale ad stated that the land is excellent for food and there is no better location for sheep ranch in British Columbia than here. Mr. Davis was captivated by the statement and purchased the mill from Frederick. Sadly, one of the reasons why Frederick sold all his land and mill was because his beloved wife Marianne had just died a year before. Marianne died of blood poisoning, which was linked to cutting her index and middle finger off when she was butchering a deer and failed to attempt to reattach them. Frederick Brent was lonely for 6 months before he found comfort in his second wife Eliza. We married in early 1892, and by November 1892, Frederick and his second wife, Eliza, left the Okanagan to settle in Victoria to start a new life. Frederick and Eliza only remained in Victoria for about 2 years before moving to San Jose, California in 1895. Eliza died from an unknown disease that baffled the doctors. In 1907, in Oakland, California, Frederick Brent lived for 12 more years before he died on June 14th, in Atlanta, Oakland. Once again, my name is Carol Coffey, and that was my story about Frederick Brent.
Thank you, Kira. I'm now going to call up Ava and Easton to share their poem titled Wild.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ava Simbalak, and I am in grade 7 at Studio 9.
And my name is Easton Martin, and I'm in grade 6 at Studio 9.
This evening, we'll be sharing our poem, and it is called Why. You probably got Starbucks this morning, and you think the world is great. But take a look, it's about to break.
We are polluting the air, and it's just not fair that all we care about are the clothes we wear.
They say we should colonize another planet. But what's wrong with the one that we inhabit?
We cut down forests and everything is burning. Let's see what happens when the world stops turning.
So let's cut to the chase and fix the Earth before it becomes a vintage object in space.
We try to act cool by following the trends, but it won't matter at all in the end.
When we wake up in the morning, we have a choice
to cover up and be silent.
Or speak up and use your voice.
We are forced to get up and cover up because we're told that we're not good enough. People make fun of us, so we have to act tough.
They say we should colonize another planet, but what's wrong with this one, the one that we inhabit?
We think we have solved the problem, so let's do something about it before we hit rock bottom.
Think about it.
Why?
Thank you for listening to our poem. Once again, my name is Ava Simbalek, and I am in grade 7 at Studio 9.
And my name is Easton Martin, and I am in grade 6 at Studio 9.
Thank you for listening to our poem.
All right. It seems to be that Rosa Casorso was a popular person in Kelowna's history, so now I'm going to ask Ali to come up and share her version.
Hi, my name is Ali, and I'm in grade 7 at Studio 9. Today I'm going to be presenting my story about Rosa Casorso and her impeccable journey. I don't want to leave, says Anthony. Calm down, whiny pants. We haven't even left home yet, says Caroline. Rosa, 4-year-old Charles, 5-year-old Caroline, and Anthony, 3 years of age, are setting off from Genoa, Italy to San Francisco. The kids aren't fond of the idea of leaving home, but they had no choice. With Anthony and Caroline screaming and crying on the floor, Rosa tries to crack a smile as she whispers, "This is going to be a long month." As the boat horn made the most ignorant sound, and the boat set sail. When they walk in their new temporary rooms, Caroline jumps face first onto the bed, screams in her pillow, and yells, "My life is over!" After long days of being seasick, crying, lots of mashed potatoes, and no showers, they finally docked at San Francisco. As they walk off the boat, Charles runs in front of everyone, falls to the ground, and starts kissing the ground and yells, "Land!" Rosa and her kids didn't know English, so she was told to follow the sound of the big bell that led her to the next boat. While she was focused on the bell, she kept walking as she saw a man who was suspiciously staring and walking fast toward her. As he got closer and closer, she started to worry a lot more, but she didn't think of anything and kept walking. After she tried to forget about it, he ran past her, grabbing her purse, and started bolting for the boat, headed to Genoa, Italy, where she came from. She started to yell and point at him, but no one saw and they didn't understand what she was saying, so no one cared. By the time she got to the boat, it had begun to leave. She looked at the boat and saw the man waving to her a nice goodbye. She laughed at him as she took out all her money out of her pocket. She put all her money in her hidden pocket in case anything bad were to happen. He gasped in shock and looked in her purse. He already paid for the ticket, so he thought he was ready to go. Walking all the way back with her kids sobbing by the luggage, she picked them up, and the way they went back on their way to Westminster. When they got off the boat to Westminster, a cowboy named Joe Greaves welcomed them to Yale and asked them to escort them to the Okanagan. Her husband asked the cowboy to keep a close eye on them for his traveling family. Rosa didn't know him, so she wouldn't budge. After he told her more of who she was and how Joe and her husband knew each other, she went with them. Greaves set the family up right by the lake to stay for a few days with blankets and fishing line. For 2 days, she was washing clothes and keeping her kids fed while waiting on the boat to travel to Kamloops. They had a very bumpy and immoral 2-week trip on a cramped wake into Kamloops. The kids being universally bored and with only being able to sit and tease each other, they came to a stop to take a break and stretch their legs from being stiff as logs. They tried to run as they tripped over their aching bones. They didn't even care. They kept running to the little pond of foggy mysteries. Anthony, in such excitement, ran for the log in the water as he was ripping his clothes off one by one. Anthony knew he couldn't swim, but he wasn't thinking. All he could think about is the nice cold water cooling him off on a humid day. While all the kids were splashing and having fun, Anthony was paddling out on his petite boat. He paddled with his arms till he felt like he had none, with his muscles longing for a break for at least 1 minute. He stopped, and then a vast gust of wind tipped the log over with him as well. When someone finally saw Anthony struggling, they yelled for the parents. The log moved away from Anthony with the wind pulling it. He was waving his arms back and forth, trying to catch a breath. He felt agony while running out of air, hoping he could grab something to pull himself up, or someone grabbing his precious life. Not knowing it was his last breath, he died. All the pain Rosa and his siblings felt, they buried him next to the pond, and on their way they went. From the horrid pond of their son's death, through Kamloops, they head straight for the Okanagan mission. From the whole time they were being thrown around on that stupid wagon, she was still, and she wept and wept till they were just out of the Okanagan. Just as she thought nothing could get worse, the horse tipped over a bulging rock in the blank silent night. The grieving horse yelped as the boards broke. The ropes got loose, and away the two eager horses went. The wagon bashed to the ground as it startled everyone. They saw what happened, and they were only left with walking the distance or waiting for who knows how long till someone could get them. But even with that, all of them wouldn't be able to go at the same time, so really there was only one choice. So they began walking. They weren't even too far. They just had to follow the deceiving paths of more tripping and scraped knees. They followed a man who said he knew where he was going, and said he has been to the Okanagan numerous times before. But they were all still worried. She kept walking, and as they got closer, they could see from a distance a sign that only some could read. Rosa could see it, but she did not know what it meant, only because she didn't understand English that well. But all of a sudden, someone yelled, "We're here!" The family members became more visible to them when Rosa got close enough to see her beloved husband, Giovanni. Caroline and Charles ran toward their dad. He grabbed his kids and threw them up from the ground and swept them off their feet. His humor replied with his concerned voice, "Where's Anthony?" Rosa stood in complete silence as Charles replied, "He's dead, Dad." He froze. He felt like his heart dropped down to his stomach and then bounced around. His heart stopped beating, then it got faster and faster at the thought of his deceased son. He didn't know what to say or what to do, so he just stood in complete and utter silence with tears that ran down his face that reflected the love for his second son. They soon started to head back for their new home to begin a new chapter of their life in the Okanagan. With Rosa, Giovanni, Caroline, and Charles. My name is Allie Hennessy, and that was my story of Rosa Casorso.
Thank you. Now, if any of you have been here in the past, you know there's usually some music involved in this production. This year, there's no music, but I'm proud to say we do have some lyrics. The gentleman who is my tech microphone dude today is our band teacher, and he's been working with all of these students to be writing some original songs. So right now, you're going to hear just a snippet of one of the songs, and then you'll hear the rest of it in January. So I'd like to call up the band of Project S9, Brooklyn, Rio, James, Caden, Mateus, Greta, Gaia, Owen. They're going to be sharing their song called Space is Broken.
So this is our song called Space is Broken. We came up with this lyrics by ourselves, pretty much. So going through the night, lighting up the sky, just like a shooting star.
Racing through the night, hoping not to lie, just visiting Mars.
When days are dark, the stars are my light, but I'm not coming home.
Space is broken, Earth is closing, but I'm all alone.
Space is broken, it's lost in time. Earth is crumbling, forgot our line.
What is this place? There's so much space. Come and find it in the stars.
Space is broken, land not mine, Earth is crumbling, just see the sign. Yeah, that was pretty much just a snippet of our song. There you go.
We're now going to take a 10-minute intermission so people can have a stretch break and we'll be back here in 10.
name?
This is Danielle.
Do people tell you you're very pretty?
She knows that she's pretty, so she...
You know you're pretty, yeah? You know you're darn cute.
You want to be big like this?
Yeah.
You're going to be bigger than me. Oh yeah, you probably will.
He started laughing. No wasn't laughing so much. Can you give me a G?
She doesn't need it. She'll start singing. Everybody's nervous first.
Everybody's nervous. Oh, I was like, my hands were shaking when I started. Ridiculous. I've been doing that for 5 years.
Yeah, she did. Well, she started working with Laura, and then she got to sing. And then next year, she's out doing poetry with her.
So I'm gonna go up and kind of bring everybody back, and then I'm gonna introduce you.
Okay, so yeah, this was...
Yeah. Oh yeah. So no, just tell her I changed that because you're not next door.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
You guys did a good job.
Yeah.
Up the hill, asking for the buried treasure, tons of gold for which they killed. Came an answer from the kingdom, with our brothers we will share all the riches of the mountain, all of the treasures buried there. We're going to move on to some more treasures of the evening. A little bit more poetry, a few more stories. I'm going to ask Claudia Clark to come up. She is going to share her poem titled, All We Need Is Time.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Claudia Clark, and I am in grade 6 at Studio 9. This evening, I will be reading my poem called All We Need Is Time. Before time had started, before buildings were made, before humans ever existed, animals thrived without us in their way. We took their homes, killed large amounts, some even went extinct. But there is only one single species wholly responsible, ours. The Tasmanian tiger, sea mink, quagga, and even passenger pigeons are all extinct because of us. These animals will never come back. We've lost them forever. And some of the world's most famous animals are at a huge risk of becoming a number. The giant panda, tigers, blue whale, snow leopard, and gorilla, and even sea otters are all on the endangered list. We can't let them become extinct. So now you're probably wondering, what can I do to help? Well, you can do some of the most effortless things to help. 1, remember to recycle. Number 2, leave your car at home and walk. Even if only some people don't drive their cars, it can still cut down on pollution. And 3, start a compost. Having a compost reduces the waste heading for landfills. If you do even one of these things, you are helping the earth. Did you know that each year over 100 million marine animals are killed due to plastics in the ocean? And there are over 100 million tons of this plastic in the oceans all around the world. Did you know that there are 16,306 endangered animals and plants? But you won't believe this. Approximately 150 to 200 species of plants, birds, insects, and mammals become extinct every 24 hours. That's 1,000 times the natural rate. That's not right. But if we make a change right now, we can make a difference. Large or small, we can save our entire planet. Let's start and get the word out. We have the ability, all we need is the time. Let's make that time now. Once again, my name is Claudia Clark, and I am in grade 6 at Studio 9. I hope that this poem will change the way you think about the environment, and about every single species needing this earth as much as we do. And if we change now, we can put a stop to the amount of endless extinctions. Thank you for listening to my poem.
Thank you, Claudia. I'm going to whisk us back into the past. We are going to be joined by Matthias Crumpy, and he's going to introduce us to Dr. Boyce.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Matthias, and I am a grade 8 student at Studio 9. Today I will be presenting my story about Dr. Benjamin the Furlong Boyce. Kelowna, 1894. Dr. Benjamin de Furlong Boyce was moving to Kelowna from the mines of Fairview by train. He was moving there so people could have a doctor to go to. My, the Kelowna scenery is beautiful, exclaimed his wife, Mary Eliza Sanborn. Yes, it certainly is, he replied. Soon enough, they arrived at the train station. They got off the train and took in the scenery, the sloping valley, the lush green hills, and the sparkling lake. Soon they were able to take a horse-drawn carriage to Boyce's new ranch on the south side of Kelowna to look at it. When they got there, a fellow passerby said to his wife, "Look, it's Dr. Boyce. I wonder how he'll manage being the only doctor for miles around." Dr. Boyce stopped in his tracks. That was also something his brother Sam had told him in the letter he had sent telling him to come and be the doctor there. Benjamin then went to Sam and slapped him in the face. "Why did you not tell me I'm going to be the only doctor, like, forever around us?" Benjamin yelled at him. It might have slipped my mind," he replied. "That's our reason to be really convincing and make me come here," Benjamin yelled back. Mary stuck her hand out the door connecting the rooms and said, If you two don't start arguing, I won't make pizza." Benjamin and Sam instantly stopped and sat quietly with halos over their heads. The next day there was a knock on Boyce's door. "There's a lady whose son was sick. He has a fever and a runny nose," she said. "It sounds like the flu, but I'll check it out." He checked it out and it was a flu. "We used the medication, please tell me if it works," Benjamin said. After a few more patients, it was time for dinner. "I've decided that we're staying," he said. "Great, I'm glad you like it here," Mary replied without complaining that he hadn't talked to her without beforehand. After 18 years of taking care of the people of Kelowna becoming rich, Benjamin met with his friend Arthur Booth Knox, who had moved to Kelowna from about the same time as Benjamin and had quickly become friends with him. "I've decided to buy the 190 acres of land around the mountain and sell it to Kelowna for $1, Benjamin told Arthur. "Why?" asked Arthur. "To give an area for the people of Kelowna to play and take hikes and whatnot," replied Benjamin. "But why? Won't that collapse the economy or something like that?" asked Arthur. "I didn't think of that, but that probably won't happen." "Will it?" Benjamin questioned. "It might," Arthur replied. Then, 2 years later, when the World War started, a man came to Dr. Boyce and told him, "You are needed to help decide who is fit and healthy enough to go to war. Young men will come to get checkups, and you will need to give them those checkups. But be careful not to let any boys who are 19 go to war. I mean, you can still give them checkups, but just don't let them go to war. Just get them back to their parents or something." So Dr. Boyce gave checkups to thousands of men and boys who were lying over their age, but only 397 of the men were fit to go. The boys who were lying over their age got checkups and a lollipop and were escorted by their parents. Sometime in the next month, 2 other doctors came to Kelowna. The first was Dr. Keller, then came Arthur's cousin, Dr. William John Knox. Benjamin would have been kind of grumpy for the people coming to share his job, but Benjamin was happy for the help. Soon, the Kelowna General Hospital was built, and Benjamin's and Mary's house eventually stopped smelling like medicine and making Sam's children, Fred and Leo, scared that they would get ambushed with needles, which they honestly sometimes did, but rarely. When Fred and Leo grew up, they became doctors and helped Benjamin with his job until 1939 when he retired. After Boyce's death in 1945, the city of Kelowna remembered Boyce's generous donation of land and placed a memento on top of Knox Mountain to honor Benjamin de Furlong Boyce. My name is Matthias, and that was my story about Benjamin de Furlong Boyce. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like for her poem Free the World. Free the World, sorry. Not Free the World.
Hello, my name is Nikita. I'm grade 6 and I go to Studio9. This evening I will be sharing a song. It is called Free the World. The world is turning into something we don't know. Wake up, nature's dying in front of our eyes. The world is dying. Wake up, the animals are dying and the world is falling. The world is polluted and the population is falling. We need to stop. The world is turning upside down. Wake up, we need to save us. The whole world's asleep. Everyone's walking around like zombies. Oh, we'll make it there somehow and make the best of what happens. They're finally starting to listen to me. The world needs to shine. It needs to be a better place for all of us. Oh, for all of us. Thank you for listening once again. My name is Nikita. I'm a grade 6 and I go to Studio9.
Wow, that was amazing. I'm now going to bring up Olivia Mickelson for our final look at the Casorso family.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Olivia Mickelson, and I'm in grade 8 when I go to Studio9. I'll be sharing a story based off Rosa Casorso on Following the Bell, but this time this will be based off Anthony Casorso, the son of Rosa Casorso. My name is Anthony Casorso. I'll be telling you an adventure, or a memory, about me, my two siblings, Caroline and Charles. But most of all, my mother, Rosa Casorso, on Following the Bell. 1884, in the midsummer. Mom was pregnant with Joseph and was ready to join Dad in his job. He was gone for 6 months, and I was really excited to see him. We traveled on a boat from Italy to San Francisco. I think that's what it was called. I'm not sure. No one knew how to speak Italian except for one man. He was wearing a black fedora with a beige plaid jacket. He also had a really cool mustache. He only spoke a little bit Italian though, but it was enough for him to tell us that he had an extra carriage for us to use. He pointed out a cart with a really large bell on it, attached to another carriage, and for us to follow it. It would then lead us to where we wanted to go, the Mission Okanagan. Our carriage was dark green with some gold or dark yellowish design on the top. The horses looked like stallions, which are one of my favorite types of horses. This is my first trip, so I was pretty nervous, but excited at the same time. Caroline, Mom got in with me, Caroline and Charles, leading us to the bell. Caroline was only 5 at the time, was in charge of me and Charles. Charles was only 3 and I was 4. She kept us occupied while Mom was focusing on driving. As we followed the bell, Charles started to have a tantrum out of nowhere because Caroline was playing with one of her dolls she had gotten from her birthday. Charles really seemed to want to play with it, but Caroline refused. Charles was too young to understand, so he kept crying. Mom had stopped the carriage and looked at them and glared. It had seemed as if she was in anger and distress, from what I could tell in her eyes. Mom turned around, seeing that the carriage with the bell was already gone, and quietly panicked. Caroline then sighed and gave him the doll. Charles, who had watery tears in his eyes, calmed down and fell asleep. And later fell asleep. 2 days passed, not sure what I could remember from those days. I kept quiet, not saying a word, as I watched Mom drive the carriage. I looked at Caroline, who looked at me back. I I shrugged, then looked at Charles, who was still sleeping, which concerned me a little bit. Caroline slowly reached the doll from Charles' reach and quietly played with it so she wouldn't wake him up. I looked to the left of me, which was the door. I could see the trees and the grass. Moments after, I was hearing the pitter-patter of raindrops bouncing off of the roof of the carriage. Looking at the window, seeing rain pour down and wind swinging the trees to the left. I thought to myself that a rainstorm was about to emerge, but I also had in mind that it would just go away at a certain time. Looking ahead, I saw Mom looking both ways, with the rain turning more rough, including with the wind. My eyes, from what I remember, started to drop heavily, hoping for a long, resting nap. Then all of a sudden, right before I shut my eyes, lightning struck in front of me. Just a few feet away, leaving a hole in the ground. I then was wide awake. I looked to my right, seeing Caroline's face in shock, and feeling the carriage rumbling against the rocky ground. Just then, I looked at Mom, seeing how she was doing, thinking that she was okay or not in panic. But I was wrong, obviously. Mom was also in shock and panicked. She held a grip onto the reins, connecting the horses and trying to calm them. The horses were frightened. I heard them neigh loudly as they were standing up on their two back legs. My pupils got smaller and smaller. By the minutes, I was frozen. The thunder and lightning got louder and bigger. I watched the horses jump with fright in just a blink of my eye. The rein snapped, and the horses galloped away down the highway. Charles was still asleep. Mom looked back at us and told him to grab him and got out of the carriage. Caroline grabbed him and got out, and so did I. As I walked in the cold, I could feel the hard rain poking my skin from head to shoulders, carrying down my back. It was as if you were being poked by tiny sharp rocks. Only wearing a ripped shirt and dirty shorts, I looked back at the carriage. A giant rock or a boulder was rolling down the hill from the left of my eye. I watched it roll down the hill, leading to the carriage. A scream. A yell? It felt like Caroline's voice behind me, so I turned around, seeing that she was yelling about leaving her doll in the carriage. She gave Charles to Mom and started running towards the carriage. I grabbed her wrist and yanked her towards me, and I had told her not to go, still watching the rock rolling down the hill. But she refused to listen and ran towards the carriage. Mom was running after her, calling her, but she never made it. Right as Caroline walked in the carriage, the rock fell onto it, and just then, I watched my older sister die in front of my eyes. Tears fell from my eyes, rivers and streams of them, draining my sorrow into nothing. I couldn't feel anything, hear anything in my mind. I couldn't even think at this point. Mom cried loudly. 6 hours had passed, not remembering what happened after Caroline's death. The rain had stopped, and looking out, seeing some new areas to me. I was walking barefoot on the highway, old shirt and ripped jeans. Looking up with Mom with no confidence at all. I was sad the whole time. I was slowly losing hope and finding Dad. I looked back at the carriage, and I looked back at the road, remembering what fear I just saw. When I looked ahead of me, I saw a sign. I couldn't read it because it was English and not Italian. I tugged Mom's shirt. I tugged the end of Mom's shirt until she got my attention. When she read the sign, when she looked at me, I could tell that there was fear in her eyes. I told her about the sign, and when she read it and looked at it, it was said Mission Okanagan. When she looked at it a little bit more, she turned content, and we started jogging. A few miles with Charles in Mom's hands, we saw houses, driveways, things we haven't seen in quite a while. Right as I thought we were in the Okanagan, Mom fell onto the ground and started giving labor to Joseph. I couldn't just let her stay there, even though I didn't know what to do. So I ran to one of the houses closest to me and banged my fist onto the door. The door had opened, and a tall man, looking like my dad, asking me if something was wrong. He was very tall and had a small goatee hanging from his chin. He was wearing a green coat and blue jeans. I pointed out to my mom, who was in labor. He ran towards her and brought her to the hospital. Just then, I was known as the bigger brother. I took a glance at the man who seemed to be him, my dad. I walked up to him and gave him the straight question, "Are you my father?" He nodded and I hugged him dearly. I couldn't let him go, so he picked me up and hugged me back. My heart melted at that moment. I never had the chance to hug Dad ever. I found out his name was John, but his real name was Giovanni. I heard that they changed his name because his name wasn't cool. I thought I would have to change my name too, but I didn't. We then went to visit Mom in the room and seeing Joseph beside her. My dad counted all of us and asked about Caroline since she wasn't with us anymore. I was speechless remembering what happened. Before I told him what happened to her, the doctor came in, telling the news about Charles. He died of hypothermia. I thought to myself that maybe Charles had died when he was sleeping. I looked at Mom as she began to cry, and so did I. Dad was devastated about Charles. He cried along with us. Just after a day, we went back where the carriage incident was and made a funeral for Caroline and Charles. It was just me and Joseph. We moved into a bigger house Dad had built with Father Pandozi as he was gone. Over the years, Mom gave birth to 6 other kids. I now, Anthony Casorso, stand in Caroline's place as the oldest. My name is Olivia Mickelson, and that was my story about Rosa Casorso based off Anthony's perspective.
Changing things on my partner she's again. Next up, I would like to call up Ava Mickelson and Marissa Magnuson for their poem titled War.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marissa Magnuson. And my name is Ava Mickelson. We are both in grade 6 at Studio 9, and this evening we will be sharing our poem called War. Was there a time when there wasn't war? Nobody died? Was that before? Look at us now, do we take it too far? Are we killing the earth with how many of us there are? With every bullet we launch, every pin we pull, you're killing us. Can you see eye to eye to stop this war? We need to try and keep this world safe, or our generation might not make it. Our world is spinning and the other planets are winning. Every time you blink, we need to think. Or if we don't, we will go extinct. Once again, my name is Marissa Magnuson. And my name is Ava Mickelson. Thank you for reading our poem.
Next, I'm going to ask Angelina Cocker to come up and share her version of Frederick Brett's story.
Hi, my name is Angelina Coleman. I go to Studio 9 and I'm in grade 8. Today I'm going to be presenting my story on Frederick Brent. Frederick Brent was an Army Scout. He would patrol the border with his troop. He wrote diaries on some days when he was not too busy. One day he wrote, "Patrolling the border that separates us from close countries. We march up and down the frosty cold ground, and some days the hot sun burns our faces. In the mud that holds us down, showing it has no power in us." One day he decided to leave the army and settle down. He met a woman named Mary Ann. A few months later, they got married. When looking for a place to live, they found the Okanagan Valley. Frederick found a great spot to build a house on an acreage that cost $600. Back in the mid-1850s, that was quite a lot of money. There were a few trees near the house that allowed shade in the summer, but some sun could still come through in the winter. It was perfect. Frederick knew that the winters were harsh in Okanagan, and he would have to went in some man-hours to chop down some trees for firewood. The town was just getting started, and Frederick was new to the town. He used up most of his money to buy the acreage, so he decided to build the house on his own. It took an entire year to finish the house, and many hands were being smashed in the process of building the small house, and maybe even a few tears. Finally, there was a place for him and his wife to call home. He had heard somewhere that flour mills were a good way to make some money, and so he decided to construct a building for the mill. Frederick began to gather materials for the mill. First thing would be to build the frame of the flour mill. A few weeks had passed and the mill was taking shape. Only one thing came to his mind. Oh, how could I make flour if there's no power? His wife told him that he could use a water wheel to make power by putting it in the river. The wheel was bigger than he thought, and he needed to roll it to the river so he could hook it up. His wife, Marianne, was worried, saying it would run him over. He decided to pull it to the river. Then he slowly rolled it to a spot where it would be bolted to the middle of the wall. Frederick had built the water wheel, and everything was perfect. At last, he turned it on, and everything was working. His face lit up like a child having ice cream for the very first time. Then something happened. There was a sound coming from the wheel. Frederick rushed to the wheel, only to see it flopping around like a fish out of water. Frederick had not tightened the wheel enough. It literally jumped off the wall where it had been bolted to. The first thing that came to his mind was, I should have listened to my wife. The wheel had just missed it. Frederick looked around, quickly picked up a huge wheel, and began tightening as tight as he could go. As Frederick headed up to the house for dinner, he thought, I wonder if my wife saw me. Maybe she didn't. After dinner, Marianne said, I told you so, and went to bed knowing she was ready. The flour mill was now up and running, and many people came to the mill to buy flour or drop off their raw grain. Frederick also took up farming with cows. One day, Frederick sold the mill. It was going to cost him too much to maintain, and it was also a lot of work, and they also had the cows to look after now. That year, when winter came, it was very cold. It was freezing outside, said Frederick. Frederick went out on that freezing cold winter day, and his heart was frozen when half or more of the herd had frozen to death. He had to rescue what was left of the cows. He led them to the house and started a fire to keep them warm. His heart was full of rage and sorrow, as he had so much money invested in the cattle. Frederick decided to build another gristmill. It was bigger and better. Marianne helped build it. A few minutes went by, and everything in the mill was looking perfect, and could hopefully run. I'm happy to say the mill worked for many years. As the years passed, sadly, so did Marianne. She died of a heart attack. One day, when Frederick was working on the mill, his own heart must have stopped beating for a few moments, as he saw his beautiful wife laying on the floor, white as snow and still as night. A few years later, Frederick met a lady named Eliza. She was beautiful. He had seen her in the small town and had accidentally run into her. They started running into each other quite frequently, and even invited her over for dinner. Frederick had fallen in love with Eliza, and he asked her to marry him. I'm happy to say she said yes. They spent many years together until she too passed away. The cause of her death is a mystery. The Okanagan. Once again, Frederick was alone, no one to stand by his side any longer. He passed away in 1919. It was his time to go to the great big blue sky, and he would be reunited with his loves of his life. Frederick is remembered by his mill that still stands today. It is currently located at 2128 Lackey Place at the Heritage Parking Club. Once again, that's my story on Frederick Brent. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Angelina. I'm now going to ask Jasmine W. and Laura to come up. They have a song to share as well. It's called The World is Special.
is Jasmine Williams.
My name is Laura Nadeau.
I'm in grade 6 at Studio 9.
I'm in grade 7 at Studio 9.
This evening we will be sharing our song. It is called The World is Special. The world is special, special to us. If we don't take care of it, the world will be dust. The animals are dying all around us. Change the world, help us. Change the world, help us. Stop polluting in the sea. Stop putting garbage in the streets.
It's bad for the trees, but most of all,
it's bad for you and me.
oxygen will run out. Then we'll have something to finally scream about.
People of the world, it's time to see what the world is to you and me. Be the change you want to see. It's time for you and me to change the world. Trees are falling one by one. Change the world. Soon there will be none. Please help, what can be done? Change the world. They're falling one by one. Change the world. Help us change the world. Thank you for listening to our song.
Thanks for listening.
We really don't want the world to end up as just a planet filled with garbage and it to be all polluted.
Just imagine if we had no more money and the only thing we could find was garbage.
Just to finish this off, I spent a year in Africa and I met a girl who I played with. She didn't have many clothes or any toys. She shared a small room with her sisters and that was 3 of them. They didn't have any water or much food and I don't want the entire world to end up like that. So please take care of the world. Once again, my name is Jasmine Williams.
My name is Laura Nadeau.
I'm in grade 6 at Studio 9.
I'm in grade 7 at Studio 9.
Thank you for listening to our song.
Thank you, ladies. I'm now going to ask Owen Smith Snellgrove to share his version of Dr. Boyce's life.
Good evening, everyone, and this is my name is Owen Smith Snowgrove. I'm in grade 8 in Studio 9, and this is my presentation called The Doctor's Life. A story about Dr. Benjamin Furlong Boyce. Hello, I am Benjamin, Dr. Benjamin Furlong Boyce, or as the locals call me Dr. Boyce. My wife is named Mary Eliza, and I have 2 nephews named Dr. Elk and Frederick. In case you're wondering where I work, I used to do medical work at my house, but now work at the local hospital. I came to this place, the Okanagan, in 1894 and learned really quickly that there was no doctor. I immediately rose up to the task because I was a doctor in my hometown. I started helping people on a horse or buggy, or by horse and buggy, when I needed to pick someone up and perform surgery. Once I bought 190.82 acres of Knox Mountain, but sold it to the city for $1. My nurses are Mrs. Thompson, who does homeside nursing, and Mr. Meglon, who helps at the hospital. My good friend is Bill Sonborn, and boy, do we have good times. Today is November 29th, 1917. I need to examine thousands of men to see which are medically fit for a war in Europe. My day has gone like this. Fit, have asthma, fit, have a disease, easily hurt, and fit. Only 4 more people to do. They came from Kelowna to get ready for war, so better check. Oh, they're here. Coming here, Consortia Brothers. A while later, well, all done for the day. It turned out that only one was unfit for war, as he had a medical condition that could save his life, probably save his life. As his brothers have to go through that bloodshed, he would perhaps die, even if one survives, the he will never be seen again. All those poor men who have to lose their lives for their country because of this war. 397 from the Okanagan have to risk their lives for our country and stop a fight between countries. I went home knowing that I gave 397 good men's lives away to the government to use in each way. Knowing that people will go, probably lose their lives. For what, medal? Maybe to be called a military hero? Why do we need to fight their wars? What do they do when women's husbands are out there murdering, destroying, losing friends? I went home to bed sad that I will be the cause for so many deaths. The next day I headed for the mines to work there for good. It seemed like hours before I got there and longer before everything happened. One of the miners got his leg stuck in the pile of rocks. When I got there, his leg was free, but there was blood everywhere and his leg was bent in every which way. We need to get him to my horse and to the horse and buggy I took here, I said with urgency in my voice. With a group of miners and myself, we carried him through the mines into the buggy. Miss Thompson and I stopped moving temporarily, but I would need the tools of the hospital and those of self-defense. We got to the hospital as quick as possible. We finished fixing his broken leg and giving him crutches. We went home for a while. I went back to the mines to finish the day. The next day I went to the mines again. I forgot that the local schools were coming to sing us at the mines. During the performance, one of the miners suddenly said suddenly, "I'd give $100 just to hear this." I took the challenge and took him to my office. I've been checked up on by doctors for I'm unfixable. He said, "Nonsense," I said. I took a brief examination of the man's ears and immediately had a conclusion. I took a cotton swab and pulled out so much earwax, it was disgusting. We went back to the concert, so once again, and he could hear you. I got $100 picture letter. A week later, I was at my house on a day off when a police officer came out. "There's been a shooting and we need your help." I took my tools and headed to the scene of the crime where there was a child in the street with a bullet wound in her eye. "Is the shooter caught yet?" I said. No, he said, fear immediately filled my chest. I could feel my heart racing. My mind was frantic. Get a doctor, get an officer in every building, I said, worried after a minute that it was all clear. I slowly walked to the child and carried her away to the hospital. I examined the bullet wound to see if it was severe. She was alive, but thankfully there was a bullet in her eye. I used my scalpel to cut an opening large enough to remove it safely. I took the forceps to grab the bullet out and get it out of her, and once it was out, I covered the wound with the towel and stopped bleeding. The next day it was all good. The kid is alive, and the shooter was caught in the building further away than thought. I took another day off and hung out with my wife for the day. The day was slow, and I thought that the world is at a point where everyone needs to keep doing their job, where people can die. Even in the future, people will need to strive to do their job. A little girl would have died yesterday if I was dead. I need to encourage more people in your area to be a doctor, because I won't be able to do this forever. I went to Bill Sunborn's house to play poker with him and friends. For months after nothing happened, so I can't come to the conclusion that the moral of the story is that the world needs people to do their jobs, or we will all suffer the consequences. We need to, or we may strive, but in the poor countries around the world, we'll starve. If the teacher stops working kids not work when they're over. For now, that's all. That's it. Thank you. My name is Owen Smith-Snellgrove, and I go to Studio9. Thank you.
I am now going to invite Gaia Carpenter up to share her story about the Lord having the evening.
Story about that. Lord and Lady Advent. Chapter 1. It all started in 1890 when Lord and Lady Advent first started in the Okanagan. They ended up liking it so much, Lord and Lady Advent ended up buying the Okanagan Valley Cold Steam Ranch. Now, coming from a ranch to a small ranch home isn't all that it's cracked up to be. When they arrived, it was old, there was dust everywhere. But they ended up staying because the ranch was gorgeous. Then again, the house was not. They found out after they decided to stay in the house, they'd have to fix a lot of things in the house. After a week or two, Lady Abden started writing a journal about life in the Okanagan to send to her family back home.
Some words she wrote while looking out the window were, "Every day I miss you. I wish I knew what I was doing. I am through with this house. I am trying to be married, but I can't. Please help. I wish. I wonder." When night hit, the rain fell. They heard screeches and growls, whispers and the water dripping. They heard coyotes howling. One night, Lord Aberdeen went outside to make sure the ranch was okay. When he walked up the house, a coyote jumped out and bit Lord Aberdeen on the shoulder. In the morning, they found out the coyote that bit Lord Aberdeen had a disease that possibly could make him never walk again. Hearing that news was devastating. When Lord Aberdeen was resting, Lady Aberdeen wrote in her journal, "One day, I will come back. I love the ranch but not the house. Lord Aberdeen is not happy with anything. One day I will come back. I don't know when, but one day. Nothing is working out. Hopefully this is the last of the struggles. I wish, I wonder." With everything going bad and not liking this move, hopefully things will get better for Aberdeens. The only thing that is okay at the moment is the beautiful landscape of the ranch. Lord Aberdeen woke with an unhappy face because he is now staying at the hospital. Lady Aberdeen is feeling pain and pressure, being the only one doing everything at the moment. Chapter 2. It is now December 29th, 1933. Things were better for the Aberdeens. Lord Aberdeen is still walking around it. Lady Aberdeen is feeling settled in, and she recalls as she writes in her journal, "I stopped being afraid of what went wrong. I focused on what was going great. This is my life. I want to make it good. I kept saying kind words, and I believed that everything would turn out amazing. Live, love, laugh. I wish, I wonder." Night passed. Lord Aberdeen didn't feel good. They went to the doctors to have a checkup. They found a disease that was reaching his heart and maybe going to block the blood throughout his body. Lord Aberdeen has been forced to stay at the hospital. The tables have turned once more for Lady Aberdeen. She is doing all the house and farm work. She is very stressed and having no time for herself. 2 days have passed. Lord and Lady Aberdeen found out that Lord Aberdeen is going to die. They are both heartbroken. Lord Aberdeen is having a nap while Lady Aberdeen is writing in her journal once more. Time is not healing. Pain is with us. I think we saw it coming but didn't want to believe it's true. I am trying not to cry, but I'm human. I can't hide the pain. I wish, I wonder. The day has come. Lord Aberdeen has fallen in asleep. Now it's Lady Aberdeen with gone in the old house. With all the pressure and pain getting to Lady Aberdeen, she misses Lord Aberdeen and her family back home. The years have gone by. It is 1939, and Lady Aberdeen is not feeling well. She finds out she is about to die. The last words she wrote in her journal are, "Death is not the end, but goodbye is not forever. Pain is nothing to hide." Once again, my name is Gaia Carpenter. Thank you for listening to my story about the Aberdeens.
All right, I would like to take us into the future with a little bit of poetry here. Kylie Klepper, Janasha Lal, their poem titled "The Pros and Cons of the Future."
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kylie Klepper.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Janasha Lal.
We are students at Studio9. I am in grade 6.
And I'm in grade 7. This evening, we will be sharing our poem. It is called Pros and Cons of the Future. Technology, progress, growing, moving, working, future, love.
Ending, sadness, struggling, losing, fighting, awful, evil.
Technology is becoming more advanced, never stopping.
Progress, moving closer to figuring out how to stop diseases.
Growing, our future is slowly coming closer, and we don't know what is in store for us.
Moving, we have to try to do our best or we may not have a future.
Working, we are always saying on working to make the world a better place, but everyone has to come together to work for our future, not just say.
Future, something unknown. We're just guessing what the future is going to be like the way we're going right now.
Love, something that has all the power. It can fix us or it can break us.
Ending, Something that should always be thought about, not to make you sad, just to make you believe you need to appreciate what you have.
Sadness, regret for what we are doing to the world.
Struggling. We are struggling to make sure the world lasts for our tomorrow.
Losing, every day we are slowly losing what the world has given us.
Fighting. People are fighting across the planet to make sure there's a future for their children to enjoy.
Awful. If we don't change, everything will stay awful. Our crops are dying, animals aren't living, people are getting more sick. This needs to stop.
Evil. There's plenty of evil in this world, but there's more good than we know, so let's let goodness take over.
Once again, my name is Shanasha Lal, and I'm in grade 7 at Studio 9.
My name is Kylie Pepper, and I'm in grade 6 at Studio 9.
Thank you for listening to our poem.
Thank you, girls. I would now like to call up Reese Curry to share her story of John Rutland.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Reese Curry. I'm in grade 8 at Studio 9. Today I will be presenting my historical fiction about John Hope Rutland and his journey to Canada. I hope you enjoy it. A giant steamship stood in front of me. Hundreds of people scurried onto the massive ship. My wife and I gave our paper tickets to the ship's captain and we boarded. The ship smelled of tobacco smoke and sea salt. "Good day, sir," a tall man with a mustache had said. He was bald on the head and had a scar on his left cheek. "What brings you to our ship?" "I am Oscar, one of the crew members," he said with a straight face. "Hello, I am John Rutland, and this is my wife Mary," I replied, tipping my hat. Oscar's eyes looked past me. I turned around to see a man and a woman with many bags. They seemed rich because of their beautiful clothing. Oscar walked me past us and turned back to me. "Well, I hope you enjoy our trip," he said and walked off swiftly. Mary and I found our room. It was small with one dirty window and a large bed. I put our suitcase under the wooden bed and turned toward my wife and smiled. "We will be on our way to Canada soon, dear," I said. Canada was a new country named 40 years ago. I had first heard of it when I was working in the orchard with my father and brothers 2 years ago. That was also the first time I saw Mary. My mother, Helen, a seamstress, had hired an apprentice and introduced us. I can still remember first meeting her. "John, this is Mary, my new apprentice," Mother had said. Mary had long brown hair and pale skin, with dazzling emerald eyes that I got lost in. A year later, we were wed. "Yes, John, I'm quite excited," Mary replied, snapping me out of my thoughts. A loud, blaring horn went off, and a jolt shook the steamship as it took off. Mary ran to the window and watched with amazement as our home of Sydney, Australia, slowly disappeared. Soon, we would be in Canada, a place where I'd hoped to make a family. Night had fallen, and the only sound I could hear was the crashing of waves and the ship's giant motor turning. Mary had fallen asleep, but I couldn't. Something about Oscar didn't settle right with me. A knock on the door pulled me from my thoughts. I got out of bed and walked to the door. The floor creaked under me. I opened the door to see the captain of the ship. "Hello, sir. I am sorry to disturb you, but I just want to make sure everything was all right." "Yes, it is." I stopped as he interrupts. "I am the captain of the ship, Edward." "Yes, I am John Rutland. My wife Mary and I are staying here." Edward smiled, tilted his hat, and walked down the dark hallway. I listened to his feet thump against the metal floor until the sound disappeared. When the sun dawned, all the passengers of the ship began waking up and heading for the dining hall. Chatter of people outside woke me up. "Good day. Pardon, madam. Beautiful day." Mary and I walked out of our room and followed a group of people to the dining hall. We entered a large room with many tables. A member of the crew showed us to a large oak table with 6 other men and women seated. They were discussing something serious by the tone of their voices. I recognized the rich-looking couple from the day earlier. They seemed to be angry. "My fortune has been stolen," the rich man said bitterly, slamming his fist on the table. "Oh my," Mary said, surprised. "Have you consulted the captain?" The rich man sighed and shook his head. He has locked himself in his quarters and is plotting a course. Later that day, the captain came into the dining hall, and the rich man and his wife went to talk to him about their missing money. Although I was concerned, I was lost in thought. If there was a thief on the ship, he could be dangerous. Mary must have noticed my nervous look because she placed her hand on mine. I looked up to her and smiled. "I'm fine," I reassured her. It had always been Mary's dream to live in Victoria, Canada. We had spent years working to make enough money to afford to live there. Now, if there was a thief on the ship, it is possible he could steal our money and we would be forced to move back to Australia. I can't let that happen. The thief should be caught immediately. Later that day, the captain gathered everyone in the dining hall. He stood up on a table so that everyone could see him. His crew stood behind him with stern expressions on their faces. I noticed Oscar was not there, as well as half the crew. The passengers whispered about what this might be about. The captain cleared his throat, silencing everyone. Today, I was informed that a passenger's fortune was stolen during the night. This will not be taken lightly. As we speak, everyone is being searched. The guilty party will be found and taken into custody as soon as we reach Canada. Passengers muttered with each other on who the guilty party might be. I was relieved. The thief would be caught soon, and Mary and I would be safe. Soon, Oscar and other members of the crew came marching in with a wooden chest. "My chest!" a rich man shouted, walking over to the crew, swiping it away and opening it up. "Only a quarter of my money is in here," he yelled angrily at Oscar. Oscar glared at him bitterly. "Where did you find the chest?" the captain asked. Oscar's eyes searched the ground until his eyes landed on Mary and I found the chest in the Rutland's room, under the woman's nightgown. Everyone fell silent as I looked at Mary with wide eyes. She looked panicked and fearful. "John, I would never," she spoke to me. I looked over at Oscar. "Please, listen. My wife would never do such a thing." "Then it was you?" Oscar said, raising an eyebrow. "No," I yelled. "Give me a chance to prove you're not guilty, Captain." The captain thought for a minute before agreeing. "You have until midnight." Mary and I rushed to our room in a panic. Unsure of what to do, we searched our rooms for signs of meddling. 20 minutes later, Mary called me over. "I found something." I rushed to her. She held up an ink pen with the ship's logo on it. In small print, there was a first and last name. The first name was smudged and illegible, but I could read the last name perfectly. Oswald. I could remember, but it could have fallen from their pocket when they searched our room, she said to me. More planted evidence, I thought. I told Mary to stay in our room, while I went to search for the captain, hoping to get out the list of crew members and their last names. As I rounded the halls, passengers gave me nasty glares and whispered to me in one another while I passed. Finally, I reached the captain's quarters. I knocked on the door and Edward opened it. "John, any luck?" he asked kindly. "Yes, I was hoping that you had a list of the crew members' names." Edward thought for a moment before pulling out a slip of parchment paper and handing it over to me. I took the paper and looked at it eagerly, just as I thought. "Edward, could we search Oscar Oswald's room?" I stood in front of Oscar's door, Mary, the crew, and captain behind me as I knocked. Oscar answered the door, and as soon as he did, two members of the crew grabbed him and held him aside. "What is this?" Oscar yelled, struggling in his fellow crew member's arms. "You are being searched for the missing fortune," Edward, the captain, said brutally. He and the crew members searched his room, and everything seemed to stand still. Passengers held their breath, and the only sound that could be heard was the waves. Edward and the crew came out of Oscar's room and decanted. "Sorry, John, there's nothing." Oscar was released and marched over to Mary and I angrily. "What made you think it was me?" Mary pulled the ink pen from her pocket and handed it to him, and I showed Oscar the paper. Oscar, I was surprised when Mr. Rutland wanted us to search your room. I have known you for such a long time, the captain said. That's because I am not the thief, and my last name is not Oswald. Yours is, Oscar said, pointing at Edward. The crew members gasped. The captain? Edward stepped back, a look of fear settling on his face. Search his room, Oscar demanded. Oscar and I searched the captain's quarters while crew held Edward. It was a small room with a map hung on the wall over a desk. I searched the desk while Oscar looked through a trunk on the other side of the room. I opened the bottom drawer and saw the blanket. Lifting it up, revealed a small chest containing the missing money. I found it, I called to Oscar. We both walked out holding the treasure. The rich man happily claimed his money. I thanked Oscar and I. Your greed has caused your downfall, Edward, Oscar said, facing him. Family was a huge mistake. You will be arrested once we reach land. Actually, he framed me, but I didn't think it would be the best idea to correct him. How will you sail? I am the captain. I sail the ship, Edward yelled. Oscar took the captain's hat and placed it on himself. I am the captain now, and I will sail the ship. Take him away. Edward was pulled away by his own crew. Oscar apologized to me for the whale thieving and continued to Canada. I'm glad that was over, Mary said to me that night. Yes, as am I. Finally, we would soon be in Canada, a place where we can make a family. The night was quiet, and the only sound was the waves as I fell asleep. My name is Reese Curry, and that was my historical fiction on John Rutland.
Thank you very much, Reese. I am now going to ask James Wiener to come forward and share his story on August Joy.
Good evening, I'm James. I'm in grade 8 and go to Studio9. And a normal report about Old Man Kelowna informs you about the story of how a French man named Auguste Gillard was prospecting in California. He had killed a native man, then left to join his friend Father Pandozzi. Father Pandozzi was on a mission in the Mission. Auguste joined the small society that is now known as Kelowna. He had obtained property in what is now the downtown area. One year, he was coming out of his home when he was spotted by a group of passing natives. They had mistaken him for a bear because of his long hair, beard, and fur coat. Kimatouche, they exclaimed. That translates to brown hair. That kind of stuck with Auguste and everyone else. In later years, when Kelowna was trying to find a name so they could be put on the map and become a Canadian city, it was going to be called Kimatouche, but the locals found it hard to pronounce, so they changed it to an earlier nickname Gillard had that was similar to the other. Kelowna was now the chosen name for the city. Gillard got the name because he had killed a grizzly that weighed approximately 1,770 pounds. And according to those people who write those reports, that's it. But there's more. There's gaps in those stories that can be filled in. There's nothing exciting about his trip to California from France, but when he was in California, he was prospecting. He had a good haul of ores, but he noticed a few shadows creep over his shoulders in the hot sun. He turned around with his pickaxe in his hand. There behind him stood a group of natives. Menacingly, they smiled. One of them grabbed his bucket of ores and started to walk away. He ran up to him and hit him as hard as he could in the side of the jaw. The man dropped the bucket, then stumbled a bit and fell into an active blasting hole. His friends rushed over to try and help him, but it was too late. The dynamite went off and killed him. They blamed him for the death and called him a murderer. At this point, he didn't care about the oars anymore. It was 3-1, so he ran. They chased him. They chased him through the cities, dodging through the crowds, disturbing the peace of the people in Los Angeles, until they made it to the port. August jumped onto a boat that was leaving the north. He was looking for his old friend, Father Pandozzi. When he arrived at the small settlement, he was warmly greeted by the townspeople and Father Pandozzi himself. He was given a good deal on some property in what is now known as the downtown area. A few years later, Gillard was spotted by a group of native hunters because of his robust appearance, along with his fur coat. They had mistaken him for a small bear. They drew their weapons and were ready to attack. He tried calling to them to let them know he was not hostile, but they charged. He ran inside his house and locked the door. They quickly realized bears don't do that, so they left him alone. Before they had charged, one of them had yelled Kimatouche. That word had stuck with Auguste. Later in that week, he went into town and asked a man who was familiar with the Okanagan people. The man told Gillard that the word Kimatouche meant brown bear. The townsfolk laughed at the thought of Auguste being a bear. A few months passed, and Auguste had an unwelcome visitor on his property. A huge grizzly was wandering around the house. When the grizzly saw Auguste, it quickly proved it wasn't afraid of human presence. Quite the contrary, actually. It ran at him. Gillard grabbed an axe from inside his house, as guns weren't as common in a small town, and with a crazed look in his eye, ran at the charging grizzly. Luckily, before the bear had a chance to maul or bite, Gillard swung the axe and dug it deep through the bear's thick coat of fur. The grizzly fell over on its back and struggled to get the axe out of its neck. Meanwhile, Gillard finished what he'd started and brutally bludgeoned it to death with a rock. There were those who witnessed this horrific event and didn't keep quiet, however. The townspeople soon started calling him Kelowna, as well as Kimatouche. He didn't like it, but he didn't complain. They were calling him Kelowna because that is the native word for grizzly. Years passed and the population was growing. It was soon to be a city, but they needed a name. So they looked at their main attraction of the time besides Father Pandosy. They were going to choose Kimatouche, but many of the people were finding the name hard to pronounce. So in the end, they settled on Kelowna, and that's how Kelowna got its name. Then a little later, Gillard died, being known as Old Man Kelowna. Thank you.
I am now going to call up Maddie Bishop. She's going to share a poem with us called When the Cows Come Home.
I'm actually not doing that poem because I can't make decisions on the spot, so I just said something. So I kind of want to do this poem. It's not really as much about what we can change for the future, but what I want the future to look like is because a lot of people say they really understand mental health, but it's one thing to say it and another thing to understand it. And there's a lot of people who try and back it up but don't have the actual
Right in front of me.
So, yeah, that's kind of just like the preface for this, I guess. I wish I was overwhelmed. I wish I came home from a bad day at school and sat on my couch and was sad. Maybe we're not talking about the same thing, because when I come home from school and I have a bad day and scream until I have an asthma attack, I want to be overwhelmed. I want to chill and take a me day, sit in the bath and feel all my tension float away. My tension isn't your tension, and when I'm stressed, I finger paint red on my skin with my nails and lose feeling in my limbs, and oh God, my foot's not even there anymore, and I beat it till it's moved because then I can feel it and then it's there. I wish my stress ended with mean bosses and annoying people. I wish that every time something was hard, I didn't feel an uncontrollable urge to cut out my brain and replace it with a new one. Because Mom, it's so wrong. My brain is so messed up. I need a new one. Fix it, Mom. Please, just cut it out. That paragraph on critical thinking wasn't finished last night because I was already critically thinking and challenging my own authority. Because when I'm forced to question my thoughts every moment of my life, because they don't have my best interests in mind, I don't need to tell you that critical thinking is a skill that everyone should have. Because the next time my hand brushes some fake velvet, I may not be able to convince myself that it should be amputated on the spot. And why did they make that stuff anyways? I can still feel it. Like I feel finger-painted streaks down my arms, my capillaries bursting from crying and screaming so hard. While you were having meetings and writing reports, I was punching trees to try and make my fingers break. And while you were having dinner with your husband, I was hiding from my thoughts like some messed up game of cat and mouse. So I wish I came home from school and was overwhelmed. Because that sounds a whole lot easier than this.
not supposed to read this book.
Nothing at all.
A story of Father Pendozi. Okay, I'm gonna skip the mic. But how did he get to North America? He came to North America by ship. He started in France and traveled over a large body of water. He had to sail through rough storms that bashed him around sailing over massive waves. At other times, hot, sunny days would be all around the ship. He and the rest of the small crew had a saying: red sky in the morning, sailors take warning. Red sky in the night, sailors delight. As he was coming up to the end of his voyage, he and his crew started to run out of food. He arrived in an area now known as the state of Oregon. Soon after, he headed north to Canada. On his way, he encountered all different types of geography. He would have gone over and around mountains and through valleys. While going over the mountains, he would have to weave his way up the mountain in a back and forth manner to be able to get up with minimal effort. He also would have had to gather food along his journey and maybe some other supplies along the way. Still, he went further north to what is now known as the Okanagan region. To get there, he would have to go over a large mountain range and back down into a valley. While going over the mountain range, he would have seen snowy peaks, old glaciers, fog, and waterfalls. Once at the valley, he would have to cross a 100-mile-long lake. He would have to find a way across. He found a fur trader from Hudson's Bay Company that told him to go around the far side of the lake. Once he got around, he headed south to where he would settle. He would have had to cut down trees to start building his settlement and gather firewood, food, and other supplies. He would start by building a small wooden cottage. He would start from the top and build up. He also started a Christian church, school, and farm. And they are still standing to this day. Still to this day, people go and visit his settlement in the mission. The mission got its name because of him. He was on a mission to reach Kelowna. People go there for weddings, to see a part of history, or sometimes just for something to do. I hope after this, you will want to go and see his legacy for yourself. Old it is. His settlement is old, but old is not a bad thing, because old means there is history within. Although he may be passed away, his legacy is not dead because he died twice. Once, when they bury you in the grave, and the second time is the last time that somebody mentions your name. But they still mention his name, leaving his legacy very much alive. My name is Caden, I'm 13 years old, and I go to Studio 9. That was my story about Father Pendozi.
I would now like to ask Nevada Netherton to come to share a poem called Dear Dress Code.
Hello, my name is Nevada Netherton. I am a grade 10 student at Studio 9, and this is my poem entitled Dear Dress Code. Dear Dress Code, I hate you. Yes, I understand perhaps hate is a strong word. However, I refuse to apologize because of the abuse I have chosen to suffer from our one-sided relationship. You had informed me quite a bit ago that I was the only young woman who wanted to stay with you. For the first few years of our makeshift love, I assumed it was easy to follow the rules you had laid on me. However, after a while, I watched your forceful relationships crumble like the clay display of my affections for you. After what I had witnessed, I was uncertain of staying with you any longer. You had once attempted to reassure me that you treated men, women, and others alike with the same stone laws that you had laid out for me. However, soon after I discovered the lie you tried so desperately to hide underneath a thin cloth, as I watched my closest female friends cry and crumble just because of one comment you made. You see, my love, you refuse to shake a stick at the boy who takes his shirt off during one measly school hour. However, if any of your previous girlfriends go as far as to show any of their abdominal skin, you will growl and tell them to cover themselves. My darling, I hate you because of the things you've done to my mindset. I sit in the bathroom, I contemplate cheating on you with your ex-best friend, feminism, because believe it or not, they are the only individual who's able to end my self-hatred, who has picked me up off of the bathroom floor from my tears because of what you had made me feel like. Perhaps I hate you because you invited your cousins, body dysmorphia and anxiety, over to talk to me, and they haven't left this forced party since you planned it. I must say, you and the schools you employ to do your bidding might say consent is sexy, and if you stay so true to your word, then I have a few flaws to point out. You say consent is sexy, but it seems as if you are only specifying on sexual consent, as I did not consent for you and the schools that you use as puppets to make me feel like a piece of human trash. I did not consent to staring at myself in a school's bathroom mirror, feeling a few stray tears fall from my cheeks onto the floor as I point out every bloody flaw you have made me feel. Many teenage girls and I did not consent to battling body dysmorphia because of the rules you say that we can be confident so as long as we do not show any but negative 70 skin from our shoulders, legs, and stomachs. My dearest dress code, after years of our one-sided relationship, this must come to an end. The sadness inside me has made me suffer daily, and I cannot have a relationship with my soon-to-be murderer if I am so close to death already. Thank you.
Thank you for sticking around. I'm really proud of everybody today, parents as well, for sticking around. I am going to call up our second grade 7 band group, Avatal, Ellie, Andrew, Caden, Kira, Olivia, Reach River. This is the band Broken World, and their song is called Our Song. They're going to be sharing this to students. And then one more poem. Gotcha.
Our band name is Broken World, and our song name is Our Scars, and we are just gonna say a few lines or a few verses and the chorus of our song. Okay, so this is verse 6, and this is, close your eyes, I know what you see. The darkness is high and you're 10 feet deep. Before you start this war, think what you're fighting for. Maybe one day we will come to fight anymore.
Running from fear, our scars will stay, our wounds will fade. Finding our way through the dungeons and caves. Let's go back to our peaceful ways.
The scars of our heart that has been torn apart, it's about time that we make things right. Let's go back to our peaceful ways. That's all for now. Yay!
Our final poet of the evening, Jasmine Azure.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jasmine Paget, and I'm in grade 6, and today I'll be sharing with you a poem. It's called Short on Time. War is destruction. It is anger. It has no limits. It is a battle between two worlds. We have to change, or our war will keep going. Too many people to count have passed. This needs to change, or we will all pay with more losses. I hope someday we can live in peace and without all that comes with war. Time is short and mostly happy, but for the people fighting for you and for me, that happy has left, and they made it to war. But what keeps them going is all the people they are fighting for. Maybe if we help, less and less will have to go and fight, and maybe less will have to die. Can we live in peace again? Hopefully those fighters of war can forgive you and me, for we have not helped and they have. They are sad. They have left their homes, family, and all they have loved, just for you and me. So next time you see a woman or a man that has fought for your right to have a say in the way you live your life, say thank you. Because before and still now, just less for you and me, but more for them who served, life is hard. Can you think if you had to live like that? No breaks, no TV, everything you ever loved you have to leave? Do you think you could live like that? Could you live like that? People that are your age, 16, 12, 20, it doesn't matter if you can fight or if you're in shape, nothing matters, you still have to go. This is something that has been happening for decades. I think people underestimate what war does to so many people. Think of those living in Afghanistan, North Korea, Syria. All of these people in these places are living in fear. They're seeing their families being killed. Can you imagine all the pain? Do you understand that this affects you too? Maybe me saying that will give you a reason to not just walk away and do nothing. Help those who need it. Use the short time you have on earth wisely. Use the short time you have on earth nicely. Once again, my name is Jasmine Paget. I am in grade 6 at Studio9. Thank you for listening to my poem.
It seems a little fitting now, but now the valley cried with anger, mount your horses, draw your swords. And they killed the mountain people, so they won their just reward. Now they stood beside the treasure, on the mountain dark and red, turned the stone and looked beneath it. Peace on earth was all it said. That does bring us to the conclusions of tonight's show. Thank you very, very much for coming out and supporting the students. I do want to say a special thank you to Kaylee Redden, the grade 6-7 teacher. She is the one who did the poetry tonight with the students. Thank you, Ms. Redden. I hope you enjoyed all you heard tonight. You can look forward to hearing the rest of the songs and maybe some of this poetry in January. Thank you very much.